The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. Welcome to Pediatric Perspectives. We're looking at children's health challenges from a different point of view, one that includes critical thinking. We're not afraid to give you the honest truth. And I'm having back today my favorite doctor physician in the whole world, Dr. Peter McCullough. Thank you for coming back to Pediatric Perspectives. I'm not going to go over all your accolades. You've written so much. You stay up to date. You're still in clinical practice, and you've written a new book that is absolutely a must-read, must-own book. Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality. Thank you for this masterpiece. And thank you for standing in the gap for all of us and educating us. I mean, when COVID hit, we didn't know what hit us. And you jumped in very quickly and figured some things out. What led up to this whole scenario we went through with COVID and mandates and masking and all of that? Because it didn't come out of nowhere. There was some planning. Something preceded this.
Well, it's so true. And probably like you, I had no idea this was coming. I don't know anybody who knew this was coming. Nobody was posting things in 2015 saying, listen, get ready. There's going to be a virus coming from China. Now, looking back, you can find all kinds of planning documents on this. And it goes back to the BioShield Act of 2003. And we chronicle this in our book. All the way through the PrEP Act in 2005, Moderna's work on SARS-CoV-2 vaccines, Dr. Ralph Barrick and the UNC Chapel Hill, Anthony Fauci, Peter Daszak, Xingling Li, and the creation of SARS-CoV-2. But nobody was paying attention until the whole country got sick. What I saw as a doctor, I was on a big NIH call early on, I think in February, and people were reporting what was happening at big medical centers. And the one message I got, Paul, was once they got in the ICU and on the ventilator, you couldn't save them.
80% or greater death rate once you were ventilated.
Right. And I remember corresponding with Joe Ladapo, who was a professor at UCLA, Jim Tumlin at Emory University. I was at Baylor, my colleagues at Baylor, Harvey Risch at Yale. We had a great team. We agreed, listen, we have to come up with an outpatient protocol. That you can't let people go into the hospital with COVID. I don't care how old or sick they are, they're not going to survive. And while I was working on the protocol as the first author, my dad got COVID-19 in April and had to use kind of an early set of principles there. He had dementia. He was in a senior home, had a pelvic fracture. He was a goner. And so I had to use, to the best of my ability, guide them to treat him. One of the first cases in Dallas. But I remember getting into May and June of 2020, and there was no Harvard protocol. There was nothing from Michigan or Emory or down here in Texas. Paul, nobody had a protocol.
Nobody, they didn't even want you in the hospital, right? They said, go home and come back if your lips are turning blue.
Right. And, a very eerie interview was conducted, and we chronicle this in our book. And it was with vaccine developer Bill Gates. Remember, he's a philanthrocapitalist. So that means he's a philanthropist, but he also makes money on things like vaccines. And he came out in April of 2020 and said, this is not going to end until the entire world is vaccinated.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. How did he know? There wasn't even a vaccine then. I mean, it was still in development. And then there just was this running assumption that we weren't going to treat the illness. We were going to wait to be vaccinated. And meanwhile, people were getting sick and people were dying of the illness. It was a real illness. So McCullough Protocol was published in August of 2020. The American Journal of Medicine was the most widely cited paper in the journal. 6 letters to the editor, all saying I didn't have enough evidence to do it. My responses were overcome your fear and start taking care of patients.
Do something for these patients.
Right. Yeah. More people are going to die. And we just looked for drugs available to us that had signals of benefit, acceptable safety, and use them in combination when the emergency use authorized monoclonal antibodies, and they were the star of Operation Warp Speed. Remember, they came out before the COVID vaccines. When they came out, we used them widely. We found them safe and effective. So there was nothing wrong with the government response in terms of monoclonal antibodies. The shortcoming was they were taken off the market typically 6 weeks after they came on the market for very poorly conceived reasons. And the availability was limited, even though our government bought enough to treat every single senior citizen, Paul. Sadly, only 15% of people who were admitted to hospitals got monoclonal antibodies. And those who got them, including my patients, they survived. Those who didn't get monoclonal antibodies died. And then by December of 2020, we had the second version of McCullough protocol published. It was already adopted by the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. So we had a physician-led, evidence-based, consensus-driven organization fully backing multi-drug treatment. Our CDC, our CDC has 12,000 employees, a $10 billion budget. They couldn't come up with anything for people to do. And it's all they do. 12,000 people, the only thing they do is they're supposed to publish guidelines and results. And of course, they're a non-peer-reviewed journal, MMWR. This is astonishing. They literally fell down. Harvard, all the blue ribbon organizations fell down. In fact, Paul, I was in a Harvard consortium because I was a visiting lecturer there in 2019. I was in a consortium with them on COVID. And the name of the consortium was Stop COVID. I said, this is a great consortium. What are we going to do to stop COVID? And then I realized, wait a minute, they're not going to stop COVID at all. They're simply going to observe what's going on. So I saw academic medicine. I saw the biggest letdown of my entire career. I just could not believe that divisions of infectious diseases couldn't get out in front of this. Medical centers could not open up early treatment centers. In fact, there was the active early suppression of treatment. And one of the most useful preventive things, Paul, wasn't masks. It was actually nasal sprays and gargles. There were dozens of trials.
I know you wrote about that. That was really, really important.
I put them in the McCullough protocol. I didn't realize that the Federal Trade Commission started suing all the companies that made nasal sprays and gargles. So there was suppression of all forms of prevention and treatment in order to clear the runway for mass vaccination.
So let's pivot from that. We have gone through several years of mass vaccination, and the results, you recently published, you and Nicholas Hulscher, an article reviewing this. There's an article out of Japan. There's the AAPS article, COVID-19 injections, harms and dangers, and non-exhaustive conclusion. Bring us up to speed. What's really going on now? What do we know?
The COVID-19 mass vaccination campaign worldwide, Paul, has been nothing short of a debacle. It's resulted in record injuries, disabilities, and deaths. In the United States alone, a solid estimate is between 500 and 600,000 Americans lost their lives with the vaccine. I mean, this is astonishing. It was far worse than the infection itself, and it's still going on. The vaccines, genetic vaccines, install the genetic code for the damaging and potentially lethal spike protein, the spine on the surface of the virus, with no ability to shut it off, Paul. This was the most poorly conceived, reckless vaccine program I've ever seen. And you're talking to the only public figure in the world who put it in writing in The Hill. I wrote a series of op-eds in The Hill by invitation in August of 2020. I called it. I said, this is a gamble. This is a huge gamble.
Yeah.
No one else saw this. Honestly, no one else saw it. I saw it. It looked reckless. I didn't take it. It looked incredibly dangerous. And sure enough, people started dying immediately after the shots. Pfizer, in the 90-day safety dossier, had 1,223 deaths that occurred. People were frantic. Their parents were dying after the vaccine. We've now, even in the CDC records, which are underreported at least 30-fold, there's 19,460 well-documented deaths reported by doctors like me. I've determined the vaccine causes death. That's the reason why I go through the application to the CDC and I report the case. I have patients die that's not related to the vaccine. I don't report it to that system. So everything that's in VAERS is causal, Paul. It's very important. It's causal by proxy of reporting. Very important. So this has been a record disaster. The vaccines never should have come out in December of, if I was president or CMS, HHS administrator or secretary, or if I was the FDA commissioner, I wouldn't have let them come out.
Yeah.
If there was a proposal for vaccination, and I was leading a vaccine campaign, by the way, with the Modulon vaccine for Operation Warp Speed, I had told HHS and Operation Warp Speed, no more than 2.7 million people should get a vaccine. And that circumscribed those senior homes, those in congregate living, and very frail people. Otherwise, younger, stronger people like you and I, Paul, and certainly young children never should have received a vaccine. Never. And I was on national TV saying that from the very start.
Thank you for that. Yet it's happened. And the CDC put it on the childhood schedule starting at 6 months. So thankfully, ACIP just met recently and made a new recommendation. I don't think personally they went far enough. You've been calling for a removal completely, right? Which is what I would hope they would do. I mean, what's it going to take to get a dangerous product off the market?
Paul, it took 60 years to get dangerous cocaine products out of the food supply and our drugs. Gosh, it took easily over 50 years, even for the AMA to recognize smoking was harmful, to get cigarettes out of the clinics and waiting rooms and what have you.
Yeah,
50 years.
Point.
Yeah, well, so we're 5 years into this debacle. Remember, self-participation is really hard. The vast majority of doctors, there was a Texas A&M survey early on, I think it was 96% of doctors took the shots. They took the shots. It's very hard for them to admit they made a personal health mistake. They had their family take the shots, and sadly, their patients. Now we're seeing unprecedented rates of myocarditis, heart damage, blood clots, neurologic damage, immunologic problems, and even cancers. The most common cancer in men and women are both very much on a rise right now. We don't know if this is all related to the vaccine, but every time we look, we find genetic evidence of the vaccine having an adverse effect, or the spike protein, or both. Now, in a research study where one of my patients is involved, Paul, we have circulating messenger RNA from Pfizer and spike protein in his blood 3.2 years after the shot. He sustained blood clots and heart damage because of this.
Yeah. I read something you wrote recently where people can now go and get their spike protein levels tested, right? And then they would know. Maybe you can talk briefly about that, because I think so many people took this vaccine that wished they hadn't. What should those people do?
Right. So the mystery, Paul, is why are some people fine and other people are not after the vaccine? The answer is in the spike antibody levels, which is a proxy for how much spike protein exposure someone's had. And so now LabCorp, given so many people are requesting the test, LabCorp has made this over the counter. You can just measure it yourself. You do not need to have a doctor's order. So go to LabCorp, lab test on demand, infectious diseases, and click on COVID antibody test. You pay $63 and just go to LabCorp, get your blood drawn, and you'll get the answer the next day. Levels less than 1,000 units per ml, every study agrees, and my clinical experience agrees, low risk. It should be no residual spike protein in the body. Over 5,000, we start to see a circulating spike protein in the blood. We start to see blood clots and damage to the heart and brain at 10,000, 15,000, over 25,000. So everybody should have this important risk stratification test. Let me give you an example. So, I have patients with myocarditis and their antibodies will be 15,000. My mother-in-law, Paul, she took 2 Pfizer shots. She's 92. And you know what? She's never had a problem. She lives with us. So I've been carefully observing Mama. She's fine. We checked her antibody levels, Paul. Guess what? They're 200.
Wow. So either her immune system handled that very well, or she got a lot that was not very strong.
That's it. So that explains it. Pfizer has 4,500 lots. There's been at least one death in 25% of lots. But 75% of lots, no deaths reported. So the majority of people are fine. The way to find out is get a COVID antibody spike test, or this go to LabCorp, follow the instructions, and get your test so you know where you are.
Perfect. And so for those who are over 5 or 10 or 15,000, what would you have them do?
I helped found the wellness company specifically to make solutions for patients. And the lead product is the Ultimate Spike Detox from the wellness company. It's the medicinal grade high dose combination of nattokinase, bromelain, and curcumin, and some minor ingredients. Be 2 capsules twice a day for at least a year under physician supervision. Sometimes we have to go to 4 capsules twice a day. It's the only evidence-based approach that we're aware of that can help clear the spike protein out of the body. There are some data coming along for augmented N-acetylcysteine. There are some positive data, Paul, for sweating. The spike protein comes out in breast milk, which is modified sweat. The messenger RNA may come out in that as well. So I encourage patients to go into saunas, exercise, sweat, have that as part of their detoxification program.
Fantastic. So the recent ACIP committee meeting where they looked at the COVID shots, they did make changes. Are you able to report on those?
Right. So they made changes for the COVID shots where they said that, healthy children, pregnant women shouldn't take the shots, but they came up with a very liberal list of what they call comorbidities or immune compromising states, including, being relatively sedentary as an example. And this exhaustive list essentially sweeps people back into this category of who should take a vaccine. And in a New England Journal of Medicine paper by Macri and Prasad, they conclude, Paul, that a third of Americans should still be taking COVID shots in their this year. And so this year, healthy people like you and me, if we were in the program, we'd be on shot number 7. If someone was immunocompromised, like I have some people on corticosteroids for certain conditions or have had transplant, they would be on shot number 10. This is unprecedented for an adult to go through such a prolonged series. Now, the other ridiculous thing is all the studies show the vaccines, in theory, if they do anything, only last for a couple months. And so COVID-19 is not a seasonal illness. It's not like influenza. It occurs sporadically through the year. So it makes no sense to actually have an annual COVID shot.
Right. And the studies, some of them show negative efficacy, right? So you're actually at greater risk of getting COVID the more shots you have.
Yeah, there's actually over a dozen studies now, the most notable one by Shreffa and colleagues, Cleveland Clinic. The more COVID shots, the more likely one is to get COVID. But what's being said by the other side, and this came out in my Senate hearing on May 21st, 2025, is that the COVID vaccines saved lives. They saved millions of lives. Well, Paul, I can tell you, we've looked at this carefully. They don't stop cases of COVID. In fact, they make it more likely you get COVID. They don't stop transmission. Our CDC readily admitted that. They do not reduce mortality. In fact, there's multiple studies that the vaccination actually increases population mortality. There's no randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial, no valid observational study that showed that COVID vaccines saved a single life. They didn't reduce mortality. What reduced mortality was natural immunity, for sure. All the studies agree. Early treatment protocols like McCullough protocol for high-risk patients, and then the virus mutating and getting milder. So it's a false narrative that the COVID vaccine saved millions of lives. And the FDA agrees, because in the package insert for the COVID vaccines and boosters, they make no mortality benefit claim.
Wow. So our CDC ACIP committee, the new recommendations that just recently came out, while they're not recommending the COVID-19 shot for kids, for pregnancy, actually for adults, except those in all these various categories that you pointed out, they are still leaving it on the schedule, I believe, for 6 months and on, and for pregnancy to be given in consultation with your physician. Well, given that my peers, I'm thinking of pediatrics, and you can speak to your peers, are very much captured by vaccinology and the belief in vaccines, I think they're going to push hard for children to keep getting this and for pregnant moms to keep getting it. And that's that in consultation with.
Paul, I don't know. You know what this seems to be? The first thing I thought of when you said that, this looks like a liability shift. So remember, the vaccines are immune from lawsuits, but doctors are not. So if this becomes a doctor's decision, now the doctor could be liable for making a malpractice decision. So, so if there's harm, the patient can say, hey, listen, the guidance said that I needed a doctor's, go ahead on this. I followed
basically.
Yeah. So some have even said a doctor's prescription. I think this is shifting liability. And you know what? The doctors may say, well, this is a very interesting point, Paul, is if this is shifting liability onto the doctors, it's going to force the doctors to ask the question, are they really safe?
And then when you dig into it and just read a few of your posts. You have an incredible Substack that I read daily.
Yeah, well, everybody should sign up for Focal Points, get a free newsletter. I just did Off the Record in the Conservative Partner Institute in Washington. I was shocked how many senators and representatives came by for an evening program and their staffers. So I just entered their names to receive Focal Points. But everybody's relying on it in Washington. We produce evidence-based citations with graphical abstracts. So if you want to get the study and the image of the study and the main findings, you'll get it every day, multiple posts. It comes out starting about 4 a.m. in the morning. Everybody should sign up for Focal Points. And so Go to Substack, search for Focal Points, sign up. It's free. And, just like CHD has got a great Substack, there's some great ones. Substack was a real savior because the medical literature became corrupt during this pandemic.
Yeah. And censorship prevented people like myself and many others, the disinformation dozen, if you will, and even people like yourself that weren't for Substack, it was hard to reach people because we would be censored.
It's true. The censorship, including the very first YouTube video I made on the McCullough protocol, was simply showing the major figures from the paper in the American Journal of Medicine. And that's as good as you get, Paul. It was scraped off of YouTube in a day. I just couldn't believe it. I wasn't even paying attention. And then the phone rang, and it was the U.S. Senate, and they wanted to talk to me. Wow. They said, "You can treat COVID?" I said, "Yeah, I've just published it. I'm treating it with comparative data analyses." And we showed it reduced mortality considerably later on in prospective studies. So the bottom line is censorship killed. Censorship killed. And later on, Mark Zuckerberg, I don't know if you saw this, he went on Joe Rogan. And Joe, who received the McCullough protocol, and Joe knew the treatment was life-saving, Joe cornered Zuckerberg on it. He said, yeah, the Biden administration was telling us to censor kind of critical information, the information that you and I were trying to get out to America.
Well, folks, in addition to Focal Points, you can also go to the CHD online magazine, The Defender. They publish daily, sometimes multiple articles a day also. And you can search that and get anything you need on COVID or anything else.
Yeah, other good point about Defender, I want to plug that too, Paul, is they get commentary. So frequently McCullough Foundation, myself, or Nick Hulsher provide scientific commentary on the studies. And so, we feel it's so critical to find these publications, find these presentations, and bring them forward. So everybody should subscribe to the Defender. It comes in, I subscribe to it, and we're constantly providing that commentary. You're not going to get this, Paul, in the New England Journal of Medicine or JAMA. Nope. Let me give you an example. I used artificial intelligence, and I asked artificial intelligence, how many manuscripts have concluded that the benefits of COVID-19 vaccination outweigh the risks? Answer, 380.
Oh,
okay. Well, let's flip that around. How many manuscripts have concluded that the harms of vaccination far outweigh the risks? I know these papers are published because I'm an author on many of them. And you know what artificial intelligence answer was? 0.
There you go.
So
this is my big concern with artificial intelligence. It is censoring the narrative, and people aren't aware of that. I mean, they're going to that thinking this is the authority, and it's very censored.
Paul, artificial intelligence is corrupted. We've even tested it on the childhood vaccine schedule, and it's corrupted there. Each time we find evidence of corruption. So, and every single time you'll see these things like, well, these complications occur, but it's very rare. It's like, no, I didn't ask you how common it is. I just want to know the complications. Yeah. And so artificial intelligence on vaccines, this is very important, is not trustable. It's not trustable.
Yeah.
And it's because of this artificial construct called vaccine hesitancy. So the vaccine industry has created a variable called vaccine hesitancy, and they've essentially made it an artificial mind disease. So if one is hesitant to take a vaccine, they literally are labeled with a disease. Yeah, there's a disease. Paul, there's over 20 scientific scales of vaccine hesitancy, one by Oxford and Emory and others. And so the reason why the literature is so poisoned and corrupt is what they would tell you is we don't want to promote vaccine hesitancy, so therefore we must suppress the articles that are bringing the truth on safety.
Yep. You and I would be classified right up there as vaccine hesitant. And all we are is looking at the literature and doing a critical thinking analysis of what's out there. I mean, we have enough information.
It's true. Now, looking back, I took 69 vaccines myself over the course of my life. Now, I don't plan to take any more, and I feel, fortunate that I didn't suffer any trouble. My children were fully vaccinated, and I feel fortunate there. But there's enough evidence coming out that some can't take all those shots, Paul. And with children now, before COVID, it was 72 dose administrations before age 18. It could be higher depending on other conditions. And what we're concluding, and I think everyone around the world is concluding, is that it's too much. The other important conclusion, and the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons declared this in 2000, Paul, 25 years ago, that no one should face a requirement to take a vaccine to attend school or military or work. That vaccination is like any other medical procedure or decision. It should be unencumbered. It should have no pressure, coercion, or threat of reprisal.
No mandates. That's I've got a lawsuit to the CDC on that very issue. They need to move all vaccines to Schedule B so there can be no more mandates.
No more mandates. And Paul, 88 countries have no mandates. So you have to ask the question, why us? If it's not mandated in Norway or Sweden, they're not any different than us. It's the same diseases, same risks. They should not. I think, Paul, I think if there were no mandates or requirements, I think that the temperature would come way down and this would be depressurized.
Right. And what they keep saying, all these terrible diseases will come roaring back. Well, we will illustrate that that's not the case. And in fact, I think since this genie is out of the bottle, their so-called herd immunity, we need this percentage, 95% of people to be vaccinated to have herd immunity. Well, you're not going to have that. You don't really have it anyway, because adults don't generally go in for boosters. So that whole thing is sort of, But
it's true. What people are fearful of is the idea if large fractions of children don't take vaccines, that illnesses will come back. And the one that's brought up the most is measles, right? Paul, because it's so contagious. In that, it's a big reporting in the United States if we had 1,000 or 2,000 cases of measles. Now, our CDC, I think, is very deceitful here. They report on our U.S. measles outbreak that 95% are unvaccinated or vaccine status unknown. That's a bunch of bull. That's the CDC. They should tell us in that 95% who took the measles vaccine, and they should know, okay? Right. And that's just wrong to do that. And I point out, in Europe, Paul, like last year, there was well over 100,000 cases of measles. Worldwide, there's 600,000 cases.
Yeah.
So the measles vaccine is not related to a measles death. Remember, when a child gets measles, whether or not they took the vaccine is irrelevant. What determines survival or death is actually how they're treated. So there's treatment protocols.
For vitamin A status. Yep.
Right. Vitamin A is a randomized trial. Vitamin A is treatment, secondary antibiotics. Steroids have been used for the encephalitis and the pneumonitis very successfully. Supportive care in the ICU. So people go from vaccine to mortality, and it's completely inappropriate because the processes of care in between are what makes the difference. Sadly, there was a death in this Mennonite outbreak in Texas, and it was analyzed. And you know what? It's because she didn't get appropriate secondary antibiotics.
Yeah, it wasn't the measles that actually killed either of those kids that ended up being labeled as measles deaths.
And Paul, in the European report of over 100,000 measles cases last year, there were 36 deaths, and the WHO can't even determine a single one that was directly determined, related to measles. So,
wow. Well, there you have it. Folks, you don't need to fear measles or any of these diseases for which we have vaccines. The risks of the vaccines are now pretty darn clear. Thank you, Dr. McCullough, for bringing all of this to the forefront. And as you wrap it up, obviously, I want to remind people to sign up for your focal points and go to the Defender and sign up for that from Children's Health Defense. What would your parting wisdom be for our listeners, both on COVID, and I want you to just mention something about how do we prepare for perhaps another pandemic?
Well, for COVID, make sure everybody, has access to the wellness company twc.health/courage. The ultimate spike detox for those taking the vaccine, spike support for lower level cases. Make sure you're ready. Wellness company offers emergency treatment kits to get ready for our next pandemic. I think everybody should be doing what I'm doing, Paul, and that use a nasal spray and gargle twice a day. That's the best way to prevent viral respiratory illnesses. There's now dozens of clinical trials. I was on the plane yesterday from Washington. I use Clear, Xlear, a couple squirts up each side, sniff it back. But I did it after I got off the plane. I did it last night and then this morning. Gargle, I gargle with Spry, SPRY, is great gargle. And we need to do this religiously twice a day. I got so sick, Paul, a few years ago. You saw me on Fox News. I was sick every month. I had a cold every month in 2020, 2021, 2022. It was terrible. I'm finally on this program. I went a year without anything. I had a mild cold. My mom's in a senior home right now. She got a respiratory illness. I went and saw her, got her on the spray and gargle. She's pulling through just fine. So remember to do that. That's very important.
And you're doing that whether you're well or sick. This is just your maintenance.
It's maintenance. It's maintenance. There's now too many randomized trials, Paul, that show it's very effective. And we can reduce the burden of all of these infectious diseases. Don't wait until you get a sore throat. By the time you get a sore throat, Paul, it's already been in the nose for about 5 to 7 days.
Wow. Awesome advice. Once again, thank you, Dr. McCullough. I know you've got to get to that pickleball game, so we're going to wrap this one up. I want to thank you again for coming back to Pediatric Perspectives.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, everybody. You can find me also at kidsfirstforever.com, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay, we are live. Can you tell us your name, please?
My name is Anthony Russell.
And you are?
I'm Cassie Gomez.
And you are brother and sister?
Yes.
And who's this?
This is my daughter, Poppy Gomez.
Poppy, that's a great name. And how old's Poppy?
Poppy is 3 years old.
All right. Tell us a story about your dad, both of you, brother and sister, your dad. All right, first question. Did your dad take the COVID-19 shot?
No.
No.
Of course he didn't. Did your dad have one of those pulse things on the finger that measured the oxygen?
I believe so. I didn't get to see him in the ER. They wouldn't let me in to see him, or not in the ER.
But why did he end up go to hospital in the first place?
He got sick. It just seemed like a normal cold. It wasn't anything too severe until a few days before he went. Just started breathing really differently. Couldn't get to sleep at all, and it had been a few days going on that way. And he had a hard time keeping anything down. And so by that third day, not sleeping, breathing funny, not eating, we figured it was time to take him in. After talking to my mom on the phone, it was like, yeah, we need to take him in. This is getting scary now. So we took him in and walked him in, and they just admitted him right away. And that was it. And he didn't call me till the next day. They wouldn't let me in at all with him. They asked if I had been vaccinated. I told them no, so they wouldn't let me in. They said it'd be 14 days after I got vaccinated that I could possibly come in to be with him there. So I just was able to talk to him on a phone a few times.
So you still refused to get the shot?
I don't think he got the shot there.
No, but you, because they said you had 14 days.
Yeah, I refused to get the shot.
You never got it?
I ended up getting it 6 months later because I moved out here, and another side of my family was very into the vaccine. It was pretty much I could not live with them. I could not be in the house unless I was vaccinated.
Wow.
So it was very opposite.
What did you get?
I ended up getting the Pfizer, so I got that one.
2?
Twice. I got it twice. Yeah.
You feeling all right?
Actually, I wasn't really like on top of my game. I thought it was just depression from my dad passing, and I've always been an active person. And I went from weighing about 200 to 230, and I've had to lately really assess my health more and more, and even trying to get into marathon running more, and just really focus on my health, because I can tell in the last few years I'm not the same guy I was. I've definitely lost a step or two, and it's been something that I've really had to mentally attach every day now. So it's something that I noticed, that I'm not the same guy I was.
Oh, you done with vaccinations now?
At least for those, the mRNAs, because what they consider vaccines used to be a smaller category, but now with the mRNA technology, from what I understand, the description of a vaccine is so much broader, it seems like, and the technologies haven't really been looked into. So, and from what I understand, they had a new survey that opened up about how many things were going wrong, and then they just closed the survey down because of, I don't know what that was called, the maps or something like that, surveys. But yeah, no, probably not what they would call a vaccine now. Anything mRNA, no, I'm not getting those.
Okay,
No.
remind me before you leave, I have a book for you, a science book, you're going to like it.
Thank
okay?
you, thank you.
Alright, going back to the story. So he's in hospital, he's just communicated with you. Is it via text?
Text mostly, some calling, but he really couldn't talk on the phone. The first couple of days, I just let him rest. We didn't think too much of it. So he called me the next day, about 24 hours, and told me, he's like, yeah, buddy, I'm really sick. They got me on some real special medication. And I didn't think to ask of it what it was at first or anything. I didn't think anything that lethal would be getting administered anywhere. We didn't know what he did. So a couple days later after that, 3 or 4 days later, he's calling me, letting me know he's really sick, and he's on the air equipment at that point. And I'm talking to the nurses slightly, and they're saying, yeah, it sounds like he's maybe getting some staphylococcus, but we can take care of that. And but yeah, it seems like he's doing okay. And so we weren't really worried about day 5, day 6 into it. And then day 6, day 7, he calls me and tells me he needs a favor and he needs a lung transplant. And I'm just like, what's going on? Like, how did we get to this all of a sudden? And so I call my sister and my mom. It's 3 in the morning, and they call the nurses, and they tell him it's nothing to worry about. Don't worry about it. He's doing okay. And then we're getting a call a couple days later, and he's being intubated. And from it just didn't sound like an emergency even then. They just didn't. To me, it didn't sound like it. So I don't know. Maybe I was being naive about it, or
I think Dad might not have made it sound as
Yeah.
detrimental as it actually
yeah,
was.
and he might have been trying to protect me over the
I
phone.
think he was
and-
trying to protect you over the
and,
phone for sure.
Yeah, so that might have been some part of it. We were really close, So
So Anthony and my brother lived in Colorado, and then my mom and I, we live in California. So when my mom and I found out about our dad being sick, it was around Thanksgiving, and it was kind of that typical, oh, these men, they can't handle being sick, he'll be fine. And then, like Anthony was saying earlier, all of a sudden it was like, no, he had to go to the hospital, and we're like, oh, like, well, he's at the hospital now, he'll be totally fine. And we're having discussions here and there, and it's getting more serious, and I think he was being more transparent with me and my mom, maybe because we were so far away. But I remember that call at 2 o'clock in the morning where it was the nurse calling and saying, your dad wants to talk to you. We're going to be putting him under, and he wants to talk to you before he goes under. And it was just really wild that this was a reality taking place. And he told me that he wasn't ready to die, and I said, Dad, you're too stubborn for God to let you die. Like, that's not going to happen. Like, it's going to be okay. You're going to be better. You'll be fine. And he wasn't. And it wasn't until I started I probably called about a dozen attorneys across this country, in Colorado, outside of Colorado, because I was trying to find alternatives for him. Because at that point, I had gotten a hold of a doctor with Frontline Doctors of America, and I had told him, hey, this is what's going on. And he had said, well, has he taken remdesivir? And I found out that he was administered remdesivir, and the doctor basically said, there's nothing much that I can do for you. Your father, I'm sorry, but this is state-sanctioned, government-sanctioned genocide among a government's own people, and I don't know if there's much we can do for your father at this point. And that was really devastating to hear that. And I think I was still in denial about that, because I'm a very big control person and I can control things. And so the next day, I flew out from California to Colorado, and I saw my dad. They did let me into the hospital. I had to get all geared up in my PPE. He was there, unconscious. I was talking to him. I was praying over him. And then next thing I knew, hours later, they were calling a meeting in for me, my mom, and my brother, telling us that his kidneys had failed and that he wasn't going to live.
Yeah, his kidneys were failing, his lungs were filling up with fluids, and his heart was failing. And so I kind of knew that was it. There was nothing.
The frustrating part for me was I was trying to find these alternatives available for him, and they were refusing.
What was it? The monochlor?
The monochlorides.
Yeah.
Ivermectin. Those were like, the
Yeah.
ivermectin was the big thing. So I had just heard that another father had gotten hospitalized, and the daughter fought to get some type of judge order in to get the hospital to allow that medication or that medicine to be admitted. But it didn't. It had to take a judge making that order to force the hospital. And we were kind of in that same situation. But when I talked to a law firm in Colorado, they said, all of this is really new to us, and we have we just don't know how to navigate these waters. And there was an attorney that could navigate the waters in New York, but it was going to cost $10,000 for us to retain him. But my dad didn't have enough time for us to get the $10,000 in time to try to reverse any of the effects from that medication that had already taken its toll.
Yeah, and for me, those last week, I was just a complete shock, and I didn't know what moves to make. I had no idea if it wasn't for her.
Well, he couldn't do anything because he and my dad lived together. So because they lived together, he could not go to the hospital. And my mom, they didn't have anybody else that could go and advocate for my father on his behalf. He was the only person available. Me and my mom were in California. We both live out here. He and my dad lived in Colorado. It was just disgusting how the hospitals were not allowing loved ones to come and be with them and be able to say, what medication do you want to give? I don't know what kind of state my dad was in to be making actually conscious decisions on what is okay or not okay for him to be taking.
What hospital was this?
This was Presbyterian.
I don't know.
Or,
In Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs, Colorado. I want to say it was Presbyterian. That's what it was. I may be wrong about that. I want to say it was Presbyterian.
And it seemed like the nurses, the staff there, that they were, I think they could tell that what was taking place was not okay. And that
yeah,
it wasn't right.
The distance of the nurses was something different. Usually we've gone to the hospital for surgeries and stuff, and they're very, just comforting. They're right there, but man, we were going into there, and it was just like they didn't even want to look at us, kind of thing. And
I think they felt really bad for us
Yeah.
because I remember hearing them say like, I remember them making a comment during like when they were changing shifts about, like we've lost this many, and it was like a comment like okay, that's kind of normal, so to speak. And I'm like, this isn't normal. This isn't okay. This isn't okay.
Yeah, just not being able to be with him near the end was so rough, and that's what breaks my heart is he was just alone. Nobody from his family was there. Nobody. Not one person.
Nobody. It happened so fast.
And
it was
they
crazy.
Wouldn't even let him.
So no one said when you passed?
We were there when
We were there yeah.
we were there, and it was even they were just being, I felt bad for the staff, but it was more disgusting for the families like us experiencing it, where we had to get suited up still and get our PPE all donned on, and we were there initially when they started the process, and our mom was there too, but she just was having a real difficult time processing everything emotionally. And at the last minute, she said she did want to be in, and the nurses actually let her in the room, and they weren't allowed to let more than 2 people in.
Yeah,
And so they just they I could tell
protocols were picked
I could
and
tell they
choose.
didn't agree with it. I could tell they didn't agree with the protocol, and but it's like their jobs. What are they going to say? No.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So what happened at the end? Did they ask you to take him off the ventilator? Did they give him a cocktail of fentanyl?
Yeah, they just asked us, was you going to do it naturally, or, you kind of just want to take him off everything and see how he goes. So for me, it was, I I knew he was going to be on machines the whole time. From what I understood, that was it. He was done. So I didn't want him to be in any pain. So if the machines weren't going to do it for him, then I just decided this is his time, and I didn't want him to suffer. We kind of talked about things, about how he wanted to go, and I knew suffering was not on the table for him. Not like that. Yeah. So I decided Cassie did it one too, but
Yeah, I wanted to fight.
yeah.
I wanted him to at least get some ivermectin, get some other alternative, but
The kidneys failing and him not pushing anything through, and his lungs just turning into liquid and his heart just failing. I just knew. I known enough about health to know when someone's time is time, and I didn't want to admit it till that moment. I just didn't. So it wasn't for her. I couldn't have called anybody. She talked to the nurses more than I did near the end, because it was just, I was getting into shock. I felt like I just didn't know what to do, because like we were supposed to be there. Like I'd run through a scenario of my dad passing in a million ways, but never did I think he was gonna be alone, and it was gonna be from our own U.S. policies or something like that. And we've been very patriotic persons. We believe in the Constitution. We believe in those ideals. We believe in the forefather ideas. We believe in God and in country and family and self in that particular order in a lot of ways. It's how we were raised. It's how his ideals were forged and drawn into me. And then all of a sudden, because of the policies that we're following now, his last end of life is being determined by that, and it's going against everything that we've kind of felt in pride and in our own country, and just how we're supposed to be, at least choose how we die to some degree. Felt like it was stripped from him, and that's the last bit of dignity anybody gets, is at least get to choose how you go. And it didn't seem like he got a choice, and it didn't seem like we were given the different options or veils that were going to be coming across and how to take those. Nope, we weren't told that. We weren't any clue. So
Did you get his medical records afterwards?
his medical records afterwards, no, I don't think we claimed any of that stuff.
I think there was too much hurt from my mom and my brother
to
pursue that.
I was in a place that I just did not want to be mad. I knew there was going to be so many people like that were going to handle this situation. I knew that something was so off and so wrong that I didn't have to be mad at this, because there was going to be people to take care of it. I knew God was going to take care of this. I knew people that believed in God were going to be shown a path to have this drive through them, this spirit take over them. So I didn't have to do it. And for me, Christ, I believe in Christ now more than ever, and I fell out for a while, but as soon as he passed, it was something that just the next day, it was just Christ came back into me, and my sister was a big part of that. And I knew I didn't have to be mad, and I woke up the next day just sad, and I remember telling her, crying on the couch, I was like, I don't want to be mad, and I know there's something else. I don't have to be mad. So that was my thing. And so I just didn't get into the medical records. I knew that something was going to come up for him, and it wasn't shortly after, and seeing on Google and remdesivir, and so I didn't have to be mad. I didn't have to take that sword.
I did email them though,
Mhm.
and they never responded back. And because my brother and my mom weren't really pushing for it, I just was like, okay, I'm gonna just sit back. But at least I did try to email, and it was no response on how to get that.
Yeah.
So is there anything else you want to add to this?
I just want to add that, I mean, if you look at Anthony and I, we obviously don't look like we're brother and sister, but just in memory of my dad, he came into my life when I was about 2 years old, and my mom, not that this sounds great, but she's been married 3 times, our dad's husband number 3, but he really, I think it takes a special man to be with a woman that already has 2 children from 2 previous men. And if it weren't for my father, if it weren't for my stepdad, if it weren't for him, I wouldn't be where I am right now. And I'm so thankful that he helped raise us to be a family. And I'm I just can't believe he's gone still. It's wild. And I think he'd be really proud of us right now doing this and trying to just share our story and share him. But he was such a great dad during our childhood. I'm so blessed that he was our father.
That is the one thing that gets me through this, is I know I'm lucky. I'm lucky. I am so lucky. Even with this death of him, I'm one of the luckiest sons I know, because I got to do all the things you do. Baseball. He was always playing catch with me. I got older, got into cars. We built a car. We bought a house together. Remodeled a house. All these things you do as men and growing up throughout the ages, I got to do that with him. So I got a lot of things in that a lot of people don't in this world, and I cherish that so much. And so
Well, if you will allow us, we'd like to have a photograph of him and put him in this memorial we have of all the others that were killed by hospital protocol or the shot, and we'll remember him.
Thank you.
So,
thank you.
thank you for doing that.